guys excited?
Oh yeah.
All right, you guys ready to learn?
Yes.
Just a yes. Are you guys ready to learn?
Yeah.
All right, then we have Rupert Magnot here of Burnout Games here to tell you 9 things that you need to know before starting your own video game company.
Thank you very much. So who here is a developer? I got one there. I know he looks like a developer. I don't know. I'd like to meet him in a dark alley, right? Okay. I'm a developer alley. All right. So anybody here part of a game company? Working with a game company? Just dreaming about it? Okay. I'm sure you all are really interested in starting game companies. So in any case, the reason I'm here is my name is Rupert Magnot. I am the Chief Experience Officer for Burnout Game Ventures, where we incubate game ideas from 0 to sales in 6 months or less. I have many years, I'm not going to give away my age, many years of experience in helping startups get started, and I taught project management for the Game Design Master's degree at Full Sail for more than 6 years, the former students of which are now managing literally a couple $2 billion in game IP. I'd like to think I know what I'm doing, and what we do is we're more than an incubator, or accelerator, or publisher. I like to call it a venturator, where we provide all the talent, the processes, the resources, and the kick in the pants that developers need in order to create quality products as quickly as possible. So right now we have over 450 people in our talent pool, 94 of whom are working on 9 projects for 6 startups. The average startup is over 3 years of age. So in any case, in my experiences, I've seen companies fail, I've seen companies be successful, and I've studied the reasons of both. And when independent gamers or indie teams are the large majority of product in the game industry, but they have a 95% failure rate to break even, I'm wondering, where's all the growth in the game industry going to come from? So what I set out to do is, and what we do at Burnout Game Ventures, is we are trying to teach you how to fish, all right? We're not like another accelerator or whatever that throws money at you and see me in 6 months. What we're trying to do is we're trying to create a sustainable company so that you're in it for the long haul, 5, 10 years down the road. So in any case, we figured there's 9 things. We had to come up with a catchy phrase, right? So 9 things you need to know in order to be successful with your game company. So let's just get into it. The first thing that you need to understand is why, okay? Why are you starting a game company? The vast majority of people who start game companies are basically gamers who love to play games. And then they say, well, I want to learn how to make games. So then they go to school like Full Sail and UCF and Valencia and Michigan State and so forth. And so they go there to learn how to make games. So they learn how to code, or they learn how to do art, whether it's 2D or 3D, or design or write or voice act or whatever. And so, then they try to get into making games. The thing is the difference between playing games and making games is a very large difference, all right? What people don't understand though is the gap between making games and making money making games is equally, if not greater in size, as a chasm between each of those levels. So playing games does not equal making them, which certainly does not equal making money making games. So in project management, we look at, in developing a company, starting a business as a project, what we look at is we have 9 different things we call strategic considerations. And a strategic consideration is, why are we starting this game company? So I'm not going to go through all 9, I'm just going to go through the primary 2. The primary 2 for why people start game companies, number 1, is market demand. So market demand basically says, it's like Field of Dreams, if you build it, they will come. The problem is if you're starting an independent game company, you are not Gears of War, you are not Final Fantasy, you are not FIFA, you are not Forza Motorsport. You do not have millions of people around the world who are anxiously awaiting your next game release. What you do have is an idea. And frankly, ideas are a dime a dozen. So you're not really going to have any real market demand for your game. Just not going to happen, right? However, there is very strong market demand for original content, right? PlayStation, Sony, Microsoft, Valve, they all have programs to help independent game developers get into their platforms because they desperately need new content. Because 80% of the games that are released every year, the big games, they're sequels, right? What's the next Final Fantasy coming out? 16, 17, right? So they're looking for original content, and if you can provide original content, like the next World of Goo, the next Limbo, the next, Minecraft or something like that, by all means, do it, okay? We love creativity, and we like to see it. So that's the market demand. The other thing is customer request. A customer request is exactly that. It's a customer walking up to you with a check and saying, make my game, or make a game, right? The thing is what people don't understand is that the average game company, the average successful title costs between $700,000 and $800,000 to develop, right? And that's a lot of money. And what people don't understand is, like I've had students come up to me and say, oh, I released my game on Steam and it only cost me $1,200, for a computer. And I said, okay, well, do you eat your computer? He's like, no. And I said, well, what do you eat? He says, I eat food. I said, okay, well, how do you pay for that food? Well, I have a job. Where do you work? I work at KFC. I say, well, how much do you make an hour? He says, I make $10 an hour. I say, okay. So how long did it take you to make your game? 40 months. Okay, 40 months. How many hours a week were you spending on that game? 50 hours a week. So let me get this straight. You spent 50 hours a week for 4 1/3 weeks a month times 40 months, all right? That's almost $90,000 that you put into your game, because for every hour you're spending working on your game is an hour you're not spending making money at KFC, right? What we call that is an opportunity cost. It might not be money out of your pocket, but it's definitely not money going into your pocket, okay? So people, and then how many people on your team? 4 people. Are they all putting in 50 hours a week? Yeah. Now we're $360,000, right? So you've got to take these things into consideration. When you're trying to make a business out of your game idea, you need to start thinking like a business person, okay? So what we're trying to do here is I'm trying to help you understand what's involved with making a game company and being successful at it. So a customer request is just that, and it does happen. There's about a dozen companies up in the Orlando Science Center right now that are doing outsourced work for other companies, making games, making virtual environments and so forth. So by all means, take that route if you can. So that's the why, right? So once you know why, then you need to know, oh, okay, I didn't know that was gonna work, all right. So you need to know who. So who's gonna do it? If you're a lone wolf, honestly, there's only 2 games that I know of that one person created it and made it successful. You had the person from Sweden who created Minecraft, right, which is a multi-billion-dollar thing, and then you have the Vietnamese guy who created Flappy Birds, who pulled it off the market when he was making 50 grand a day because he heard people were getting addicted to his game, right? That's 2 people. There's 360,000 people in the world that are working in video games right now. 2 out of 360,000, I'd rather buy a lotto ticket, right? So that's not a percentage play. What you really need to do is you need a team, okay? Now, in order to create a game in a reasonable period of time, you need 2 to 4 artists, you need 1 to 2 programmers, 1 to 2 designers, you need an audio person, and you'll definitely need a producer or a project manager who's running the thing, making sure it's done on time and on budget. So now you need 5 to 10 people, right? So, and yes, when you're in school and you meet your classmates and so forth, there are other people and you become friends and all that, and you ask them to be part of your team because you're friends. That's all fine and dandy, but if you want to make a business out of it, you want to bring in the best people you can find. So you go to that one nerd in your class that sits in the back, who's got his head down, who doesn't do anything, but he's always getting straight A's because his product is the best. That's the person you go to and you convince with your vision and your mission and your goals, and get them to come onto your team and work with you. Okay, so strive to make the best, right? So we've got designers program. I've worked on some of the most complex projects that you can possibly imagine. right? And I will tell you this right now, they got nothing on game development, right? We have 57 job descriptions at Burnout, and we're talking artists and programmers and designers and producers and voice actors and so forth. They all have to communicate with one another. And as you all know, they don't think the same way, right? So you have all these different problems and challenges with regard to getting people to communicate and to work together that really increase the complexity of projects. So, but basically, when it comes to who, get the best. Absolutely get the best. And don't be afraid to ask them. You know, we have 24, currently we have 24 advisors. And these are people that have, you know, lead cinematographer in World of Warcraft, lead artist on Assassin's Creed, developer of, you know, the Star Trek and the Marvel games. You know, these are people, you know, who took grief from nothing to $500 million. Ask them, just ask them. Don't be shy. These people want to help. Fortune favors the bold. Get your team, okay? So that's who. The next thing is what? Well, in what, you have resources. You need computers, you need software. You know, these things cost money, obviously. For a couple $100, you can go on Craigslist and get a decent Alienware laptop. Unity and Unreal are the two primary engines that people use, and they're free to use. However, if you're going to make money with them, then you have to get a pro license, which is like $1,200, $900 to $1,200. So save up your money over the time that you're developing the product, you know, $1 a day or $2 a day or whatever, to have that money when you release it. Then you also have Sony and Microsoft have software development kits, SDKs, that you have to purchase in order to develop product for their platforms. So those are also, you know, $1,200. So again, more costs are involved in developing games using for their particular platforms. So understand those resources. Then of course, the next thing you need, aside from the resources, is planning. Now, this to me is probably the most crucial aspect of the whole endeavor, because if, you know, the adage "fail to plan, plan to fail" is a truism of the highest order. So what do you plan for? Well, there's 4 things. The first thing is scope. Scope is the work and how it's done, okay? If you don't plan the work and how it's done, I absolutely guarantee you just throw out 50% of your time, money, and effort out the window. Just absolutely guaranteed. In fact, probably close to 75%. So what do we mean by this? So in scope, we are looking at your objectives and requirements, which are basically your core features of your game. So in other words, what's the game look like? What's the art style? What are the characters? Who are the characters? What's the lore? What's the story behind the game? Like our 2D puzzler, they're Pilcrow, which are cute little mythical creatures that were kidnapped by a mad scientist, and you have to save them. You have let them escape the lab and then run away and get out of their situation back home to paradise. So other core features are the mechanics, the physics of how do they jump, what do they look like when they move, and things like that. All these things are core features that you need to identify and put and document. Then the work, that's the work. How it's done is, well, your methodology. What methodology are you going to employ in order to create your game or your project? What we do is we take a combination of both what we call waterfall methodology, which is do all your planning and that's it up front, and then go to the plan, and then we combine that with an agile or scrum-based methodology, which is every 2 weeks we have an iteration and goals that we have to meet and so forth, and then we can change things up as we move along. So we'd have a mixture of that, and we set aside the first 20% of our project schedule just to do the documentation. So we send all our teams through a 2-month education program, at the end of which they've got 4 different documents created. Those 4 documents are the game design document, the tech design doc, the work breakdown structure, and the capacity plan, okay? So the game design doc is exactly what it sounds like. It's a document that designs the entire game. All the things that I just discussed, what it looks like, its art style, its mechanics, the lore, the story, everything. And if you've got concept art to put in there, even better. So you've put that, basically explains to the whole team, and the whole team is involved in creating all these documents, not just one person. You want to make sure all your stakeholders are involved. So once you have the game design doc, then you do the tech design doc, which is basically the programmers looking at the GDD saying, okay, what do we have to code in order for the thing to move this way, to look this way, to operate this way, and so forth. And then you have a work breakdown structure. A WBS is a item by item, task by task listing of everything, every single activity, every task you need to complete in order to get your game done. So like at Full Sail, when we were teaching, when I was teaching my class, in 1 month I had them create a 5-month project management plan that included a work breakdown structure, which is usually averaged about 1,200 tasks. These are broken down in levels. Level A is the game. Level B is alpha, beta, prototype, gold, release, etc. And then then your next levels, you keep breaking things down and breaking things down. At NASA, we started at A level and we went all the way to CA. So A to Z, AA to AZ, BA to BZ, and CA. It was, you want to talk about, it was over 22,000 items long. But we don't ask you to do that for game development. In fact, whatever works, right? If you can do it in one page, then by all means do it on one page. So, and the work breakdown structure also provides you your backlog for your sprints. So every 2 weeks, whatever you didn't complete, that becomes at the top of it, and then you pull from your work breakdown structure all the other tasks. You don't have to make up these tasks as you go along. They're already there, right? So that just saved you a ton of time and effort in order to plan for your next sprint. And then the fourth thing is your capacity plan. A capacity plan is simply all the people on your teams giving you their schedule. Okay, Kip the artist is going to be available, Tuesday nights for 2 hours, Wednesday nights for 3 hours, Thursday nights for 1 hour, Friday nights for 3 hours, and et cetera, et cetera. So it's basically each person on your team saying how many hours a week and what days a week that they're available. Then you take that information and you put it in your work breakdown structure and rearrange your tasks based on when it can be done by the person that does it. Not only that, but in your work breakdown structure, you say how long is it going to take to do this task, what day it's going to start, what day it's going to end, and so forth. And then, you give the project manager a whip and a chair, and so he can just, make sure everybody gets things done on time. All right? If you don't do these things, trust me, you are throwing away 50 to 75% of your time, your money, and your effort in developing your game. I do not understand why it takes more than 6 to 12 months to make a video game. I just do not. Okay, so those are those aspects. So that's the work and how it's done. The next thing, of course, is the schedule. The schedule is basically your milestones. Your prototype, your vertical slice, your alpha, your beta, your gold, your release. Our Not Without You game is right now in alpha, and we're going to release it in alpha because we've already done our market testing. We've collected almost 200 surveys from people who've play tested the game, and we believe it's going to be a hit based on those surveys, so we're going to release it, right? It's ultimately going to be 5 worlds of 20 levels each. We're releasing 2 worlds of 20 levels each to selected markets, greasing our processes, learning about getting feedback, making money, and then doing a slow but still aggressive release schedule. So that's when we go into beta and then gold and then other markets. So make sure you have your schedule, right? If you don't have a schedule, you're not going to keep to it, and if you don't keep to it, see you in a couple of years. Okay. So those scope and schedule. The third one is cost, right? In addition to the hardware and the software I talked about and the SDKs and so forth, you got to pay rent, you got to eat, right? So these are all costs that you have to factor into the development of your game. Because if you're working in your bedroom, then you have to pay rent. Well, wherever you're working, that part of your rent is going towards the cost of the game, right? So that's part of the cost of the game, and you want that money back, okay? Hopefully you want that money back. Then, of course, quality. Now, the thing in independent game development with regard to quality is for us, it's basically understanding what you're willing to give up in order to get your game out, okay? So, first of all, stick to your core features. Those are the things you need to polish to make sure they work perfectly well, right? But that's it. All the other little things that you need to do are almost irrelevant. If your core features are really good, then your game's going to be a smash hit, okay? So make sure your core features are great. The biggest adage that I would recommend, aside from fail to plan, plan to fail, for indie developers is stop gold plating your game, right? They always tell me, oh, it's not ready for release. Why not? Well, this character doesn't look right. Who cares, okay? Who cares? If your core features are working right, if you can come up here to Otronicon and exhibit your game, and people can play it and say, this is a great game, you're done, release it. Just release it. Get it out there, generate revenues, get feedback. You can always improve the game. Every 2 weeks you can set up another release. And every time you send a release, you send it to your fan base that's growing and growing every day. And now they're telling their friends, hey, the game just improved, right? Remember that thing I didn't like about it? They fixed it. Oh, really? Oh, that's pretty cool, right? So I'm gonna go get the game. So by all means, get the game out there. This is being a business person with regards to getting your game out there and being successful. So stick to your core features, and make sure that it gets out there. So speaking of market, the things you have to understand are that you need to know about your game and its place in the game world, so to speak, are age. Obviously, infants aren't going to be playing your games. Well, maybe not anytime in the next 5 years, right? So the thing is, 8 to 12-year-olds have different needs, wants, and expectations than 18 to 24-year-olds and 35 to 40-year-olds. The average gamer is 35 years old. The average game purchaser is 37. Quarter of the marketplace is my age or older, okay? So we all have different needs, wants, and expectations of what we want and need and expect from a game. So if you're targeting for that particular market, you better know what they are. And then you make sure your game meets those things, okay? The next thing is platform. Typically what you're going to do is you're going to make it in Unity or Unreal or Game Maker, and it's going to be like on PC or Mac, right? Probably PC for Steam. The thing is, though, is that's fine and dandy, but if it's just for PC, then you're losing 17% of the market, right? And so if you put it on Steam, I recommend you do it for both PC and Mac. Then you have iOS and Android. iOS is one market that's very fractured. A lot of people, I know one team that spent 3 years just trying to get their game playable on all Android platforms because there's about 200. And it's like, why do that when you could have spent all that time on one Apple platform that would be good on all Apple phones, right? You've got, Sony PlayStation, you've got Microsoft Xbox. These all have different coding structures in which your game must adhere to. So while you create your game in Unity, and fortunately Unity and Unreal offer real easy or fairly easy ways to convert and port your game from one platform to the next, what you need but the thing is even when you push that button and convert it, you're still looking at another 2 months of effort in order to make sure that it's going to work on that platform. And every single time you release a product on a new platform, that's a new product. It might look the same, it might have the same name, and it might play the same, but it's a different product. So one title can have 9 different releases, okay? So keep that in mind as well. Then of course, male or female. The video game market overall is 50-50, right? You ask somebody, it's 49% male, 49, ask somebody else, it's 49% female. It's like, it's pretty much 50-50. The thing is except mobile. Mobile is like 67% female. The thing is males and females have different ideas and, again, needs, wants, and expectations about the games that they play. So if you're aiming your game at females or you're aiming at males particularly, know what these things are and make sure that your core features are addressing these things, okay? The genre, what's the genre of the game, okay? At BGV, we have a 2D puzzle brain teaser, we have a 2D retro platformer, we have a first-person 3D parkour exploration game, and we have multiple other titles, kind of like a mutual fund of video games. But the thing is if you need to understand your genre and what kind of game you're making. There's a game upstairs that I really like called Tootin' Pooches, and I think they won the recent serious games at ITSE. And you know, they're a multiplayer. 4 different people can play on one game system at a time, which I think is great. But again, know what kind of genre and what you want to go for, and to, you know, develop your game, because their genres are going to have much different lore and story and gameplay and so forth. And then of course your budget. The vast majority of indie game developers spend 3-4 years developing their game, and then they release it on Steam, and then they walk away. You know, they thump their chest and they say, hey, I made this game, and they tell all their friends. How many friends they got? 200? Okay, because they're not even on Facebook. So, you know, so at most they can sell 20 or 30 games, right? That's not going to pay them back for the tens of thousands of dollars that they didn't make making the game, right? So you got to understand your budget. And then, you know, at BGV, we set aside $25,000 to $100,000 per release, and that's because, you know, we're going after Apple, we're going after Google, we're going after everybody else, and you have to understand the things that are involved. You got Facebook customer acquisition. Every single person that buys your game is a customer that you had to acquire some way, and there's a cost involved in that. Obviously, your goal is to make that cost as low as possible, right? But as we all know or suspect, going through social media to acquire customers is probably the most wasteful way to generate customers. We did a study for, got chosen when I was the director of game ops on customer acquisition on Facebook and Google Ads, and it was 3%. In other words, 97 cents of every dollar you spent was wasted. Only 3 cents of every dollar was actually used to acquire customers, which is crazy if you ask me. So you have to understand and look at all the different things that you need to do in order to market your game. I strongly suggest that you do a comprehensive program of not just social media, but radio, podcasts, TV, print media. Come up with something cool. I mean, the guys at Angry Birds, did you see the video of them doing that went viral? They basically created a live Angry Birds in a town square in Denmark, and people were using their phone and they were shooting the thing, and you'd see this thing poof over, you know, over and knock the blocks, and thousands of people were gathered and they were cheering and everything like that. Come up with something cool. Use your creativity. It's not limited to your games. It's boundless. So come up with really cool ideas to help market your products or services. So that's basically the market. And then the last thing you need to understand about starting your game company is the corporate side of things, right? So are you going to be a sole proprietor? Are you going to be an S corporation? Are you going to be a limited liability corporation, single member, multi-member? These things you need to understand. There's plenty of information on the internet for you to learn about these things, but the best thing, of course, is to talk to an attorney and let them help you understand and decide what path you want to go. And a lot of this depends on how you expect to grow and how you expect to expand. The other thing is, you know, Uncle Sam, he wants his taxes. So the first thing you need to do is go to IRS and file for an employment identification number. It's kind of like Social Security, except it's not social and certainly not security. But the thing is you got to get one, and then once you get one, then you go to sunbiz.org, and you file your state license, and you file your company with the state, and you know what kind of company you are and all that stuff. And don't forget your licenses. In Orange County, you have like an occupational license. An occupational license is basically and then you have an intangible property tax as well. So if you don't file these things, and you start making money, somebody somewhere is going to, in a little office with a little green hat on and little armbands and whatnot, they're looking at the computer and they're saying, oh, well, you made this much money last year. You're going to get a letter saying, oh, you need to pay us this much money, and then you need to pay us a fine because you didn't pay us that money yet. So basically, you don't want to be that company, okay? So these are all the things, these are the 9 things that you need to understand before you start your game company. So who, what, why, market, corporate, and then of course the 4 primary constraints: scope, schedule, cost, and quality. So my name is Rupert Magnot from Burnout Game Ventures, and I approve this message. So questions? Yes?
What's your opinion on like early access and other forms of getting your game out early to the?
Well, I thought it was a great program the way they had it set up before with before early access was Greenlight. And I thought it was a great deal. The thing is it was taking companies that were getting greenlit an average of 36 months to get greenlit, okay? And then once they got greenlit, it was taking them an average of 19 months to go through early access. And the thing, and I don't know if that's progress, right? But they changed it recently, like about 9-10 months ago, to the Steam Direct, and I don't know if that's been an improvement, because all that's doing is adding a lot more games to their portfolio. They went from releasing 1,700 games a year 3 years ago to this year, or this in 2017, I believe they released almost 10,000. So that's a lot of competition, right? And so now all the things that I discussed here make it even more imperative that you do those things to stand out in that crowd, okay? So to answer your question, it is what it is, all right? It's an avenue by which you can release your game and get it out there and get known and hopefully make some money and build your brand and all that. What you need to do is you need to study it and understand what it really is, talk to people who've been through it, who've been successful in making their games, get expert judgment from them as to what they did that worked and what they did that didn't work. So don't do what didn't work and then do the things that do work. Yes?
So you think it'd be better to release your game early on early access rather than finish it and then release it?
Yes, because you do it in early access, and what happens is now you've got people, you're forming a fan base, and you're getting feedback from your game. You do run a risk that you're going to get a lot of bad reviews, right? Because gamers are notorious. Oh my gosh, you know, 1 million people will love your game and they'll buy it, but they won't say a thing about it. But one person finds something wrong about it, and you could be done. So the thing is I still encourage you to, if you follow the things that like I said, again, plan your stuff in the beginning, know your core features, make sure they're polished well before you release, and then play test it. And when you do all those things right, then by all means, do early access, get it out there, start making some money, generate some feedback. But the key thing with early access is you need to have consistent updates, at least once a month, if not every 2 weeks. Always update your game. Fix just the smallest thing, you know, if you can, that negative feedback you got. Fix one thing and come up with a release, because as you start populating that page with all your updates, people see that and they know that you're serious about making a game that they're going to enjoy. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay.
For
Yes.
someone who might be who definitely is interested in computer design or game design and programming, that doesn't want to work at the KFC, you gave the example of the opportunity costs and
Yeah.
the KFC wages. If they don't have budget for all this yet, where should they devote their efforts? As in a specific type college degree, a more important to get a design portfolio together, to join your team as a designer, or whatever. What are the background requirements?
Well, I'm a, you know, as a former educator, and besides that, I became an educator because I believe in education. It's education. The schools provide huge opportunities. Okay, even if you go to Valencia or Seminole, within 25 miles of where we're sitting right now, there's 50 post-secondary curricula related to game development in schools in the area. Okay, we have 50,000 students that are going through game curricula within 25 miles a year. I don't know any. 500,000 students, post-secondary education students, period, within 100 miles a year. I don't know of any other place on earth that has that. Not New York, not Boston, not Austin, not LA, and we have a huge pipeline. So by all means, take advantage of that. By having all those students there, when you go to school, now you've got classmates, you make friends, you form bonds, you learn about each other's skill sets and talents and so forth, and you form teams, and you work together as teams. You know, I was talking to a student of mine a couple of years ago who's working for a company in San Francisco, and I asked, I said, Jake, I said, don't you miss Orlando? He says, why? I said, aren't your friends here? He says, and I can hear him standing up. He says, there's Kate, there's Jose, there's Bill, there's John, there were 10 people in that room that were former students of mine in one room in San Francisco. my problem is that at $95,000 a year average compensation, that's nearly $1 million of lost economic development from Orlando in one room, in one city, okay? But going back to your question is, yes, by all means, go to school, ramp up whatever you want. There's middle schools that are offering game and simulation programs. There's high schools that are offering it. There's charter schools. There's, I mean, all kinds of things that you can do to learn these things, these STEM-related programs, because there's nothing more STEM-related than game development. If you have actually STEAM-related. I like to add the A and the art in there, right? So by all means, go to school, learn these things, form relationships, get and do these things with people, and grow that way. I encourage you. However, you know, it depends on how talented you are. I mean, if you and 3 or 4 of your guys are super talented, then maybe go to night school or something like that and spend most of your time developing your games. But do it right. Do the planning right and all this right, and you won't be wasting your time or effort. And then you can get into EA or whatever that way, because you have a portfolio of games that you've developed that have reached a modicum of success, and they'll look at that too. Okay? Because, you know, I had a simulation business for 11 years, and half the people in my employ didn't even have a degree, but they were damn good at what they did. So who am I to judge, right? So by all means, know what you want, plan your path on how to get there, and then follow that path. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Come on, I know you.
Yeah, so I've
Yes.
got one. So, you know, not a coder, not a gamer, but very interested in the whole simulation and virtual reality. As a person who would want to look into some small investments, what is Orlando like? Are there angel communities and things like that one could start learning more about? What are the opportunities and how to back?
Well, to be
some
perfectly
things?
frank, you're my ideal potential investor. Okay. The thing is to answer your question, there are about a dozen angel and venture capital groups that are operating in Central Florida and Orlando here. My problem is they're just like the video game industry, they're hit based. Okay. In other words, they work all their lives making money, working hard, right? And then they spend thousands of hours every year reading hundreds of business plans, and they hopefully invest in 10 of them. Of those 10, they're absolutely certain 5 of them are going to fail. 2 of them are going to break even. 2 of them are going to make maybe 2 to 5x, and then one's going to do 10x, right? 10 times the amount of money that they put into it. The problem with that is I don't know about you, but when I invest, I don't invest to throw my money away, right? I know why companies fail, right? It's bad management. And the thing is these venture capital firms and whatnot are doing absolutely nothing to prevent that bad management from occurring. That's why they expect 50% of them to lose. What we do is we say, okay, let's focus on the management and on teams and the management of those teams and say, we don't need a hit. If every single one of a hit in the game industry is 250,000 units, we say, look, if every single release that we have on every platform does just 60,000 units a year, which is 1/5 of a hit, which is actually the median of the top 50% of the money generators in the industry, we're doing $500 million in 5 years, okay? So, but every single one of our games is hitting that. And if we have hits, well, you know, we get our Lamborghini sooner, right? So the thing is you can go to these organizations, and they are doing good. There's no question about it. They're doing good. They're helping companies out. They're investing millions of dollars in the local economy. I think the first quarter of last year was 6.7 million, but you know, Silicon Valley was 690 million. So, you know, 6 and 1. People like to compare us. I'm not going to go on that tangent. So, in any case, so what we're doing is we came up with a different business model and different financing model, and we're going after people who don't know games because it's $110 billion and growing 10% a year, and people don't know about it. So by all means, you know, I'd love to chat with you later and explain a little bit more about how these other organizations are working and how they're basically they're handcuffed, basically, because they have shareholders and stakeholders that have basically say you can only do this, and companies can only do this. I mean, they come to me and they say, we're not going to invest in you because we don't know games. And then 3 months later, they invest $1.6 million in a game company that already $2.1 million has been invested, and they still don't have a product. And I'm like, wait a minute, I'm paying ROI already. So in any case, there are opportunities. If you want to know who these people are, I'd be happy to introduce you to them. However, I think there's a better way to invest. So I'd love to chat with you about it. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, we'll take it offline, but I think, access to capital is one of probably the biggest hurdles that.
Access, yes, it is here.
Mm-hmm.
There's $45 billion in deposits in Orange, Seminole, and Lake County. I mean, don't tell me there's not money here.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't have the balls or your imagination to get it, I don't know what to tell you, right? So that's what I'm doing, is I'm going out there and finding these people that are typically entrepreneurs. They've got companies that are doing between 1 and 10 million a year. Kids' education's paid for. They don't have bills, many bills they have to worry about, and they're looking to invest in something like, hey, well, I'd like to invest, but I don't know how. I don't know how to get started, and I want to give back to the community. And I'm just like, okay, well, I've got a whole plan all laid out, right? Who else does? I don't know. So that's my pitch for my investment pitch there. So I hope I answered your question. Any other questions? I know somebody's got a question. You look like you got a question on your phone. Okay. You have a question?
Well, I'm in the education field, so I was thinking, because I get to show kids like for example, for a year and a half I've been showing them virtual reality, and like that's something new for them, unless they got to have the PlayStation VR or something like that. But that's kind of like $400 and so on. So now everybody's getting one.
What's better than $12,000?
Yeah, that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I do get to show them like the Gear VR because that's just like $100, or the Google.
What about the Google Glass?
Google
or the
Glass.
Cardboard, the Google Cardboard.
Oh, Cardboard, yeah. So how can I tell the students, because when I get to talk to them about games, they kind of like jump because they don't expect to see many people who knows about games in the education field.
Right.
I get to go to different schools. I'm working as a substitute teacher, but looking for a full-time teaching job.
Right.
But I do get to talk, and I wish I could use more technology, especially like gaming or
both.
edutainment.
Not only you and me both, but the other 100 million students in this country, because we're 28th in the world. When you look at the other 27, what are one of the things that they have in common? Games in the classroom. Okay. So we're working on virtual reality games and other games. Our 2D puzzle game is actually built to help with spatial recognition and cognitive reasoning, as well as strategic planning. And so I mean, these are things that kids can use in the classroom. So we're not. Yes, we've got the one company's in 2 schools in Seminole County, and we're trying to get it through countywide. But we're going to the charter schools, we're going to Montessori, we're going to the other places that we have a foothold, and we're going to go that route. And once the public school systems see the huge increase in student preparation and testing and things like that in the other schools, they're going to take notice, and then they're going to start jumping on board that bandwagon. But there's still opportunities there too, because there's nothing stopping you as at the public school.
Yeah.
There's nothing stopping you from going to a friend of yours who owns a company and saying, I'd like to have 25 Gear VRs. Would you fund that for us? Right? It's a 501c3. They can write it off, and now you have 25 Gear VRs for your students. Right? And then come to a company like me to create the content for that. Maybe not now, but hopefully by the end of the year, I'd be delighted to do that, right? So just ask. Just ask. The opportunities are out there. We need to get. Well, I'll do anything I can to get the games into the classroom. So, whatever opportunity you can present, let me know. Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions? No.
I just have an answer. 42.
42. Yeah, 42. Yeah. Actually, it's 43 now. Yeah. Okay.
All right.
Well, thank you all for coming.